Prepare yourself for the 2025 Halloween special from the Warning Woods. This is Act 2, so make sure you hear Act 1 before you start this episode. The story will conclude with Act 3 tomorrow on October 31st, Halloween. Without further ado, please enjoy the Crutchfield Estate, Act 2. While I was exploring beneath Lawrence Crutchfield's golf course, another event crucial to this story took place at the hospital where his wife Adele was recovering from surgery following their car accident. A man by the name of Roger Hickox, formerly Father Roger Hickox, whom she wanted to officiate Lawrence's funeral, came to visit her bedside 2 days after the accident. Besides being the Crutchfield's former priest, Roger served as Adele's spiritual advisor, confidant, and friend. Although, as he was about to learn, certain aspects of her life she kept private even from him. "Roger," Adele cheered in a hoarse whisper when he bowed into her room. She was dressed in a hospital gown, lying at a 30-degree angle with a white sheet pulled up to her neck. Roger could see the shapes of her arms folded at the wrists across her stomach. He tried not to wince at the bruises on her neck and above, which made her face look like a weather map with storms encircling her eyes, expanding outward, growing less severe as they reached her cheeks and ears. She had a massive stitched-up gash running down the middle of her forehead at a slight diagonal angle. Her nose was practically black. He hoped his reaction didn't show when he saw that swollen thing in the middle of her face. "So nice to see you," he said, flashing a smile as he sat in the recliner next to her bed. His small but perfectly aligned teeth quickly hid behind his graying goatee. He asked, "How have they been treating you? I tried to bring you an arrangement of acacia branches, but the front desk confiscated them." "Ah," Adele scoffed. "These people and their rules. Rules. It seems like that's all they care about around here." Roger nodded softly. "And of course I'm so sorry about Lawrence. What a terrible, terrible thing to happen. I mean, the odds." Adele rolled her blackened eyes and said, "Oh, stop. I know you never liked him." Roger raised a finger to his lips, then pointed it at Adele and said, "I think you've got it backwards. He never seemed to like me, but I never minded him." "You never minded him," Adele repeated, chuckling. This small laughter obviously caused her pain, though. She winced, stopped, then said, "He just preferred you as a priest, that's all." Roger crossed himself, then pointed skyward. Looking at the ceiling, he said, "That one's for you, Lawrence." When he didn't hear Adele laugh, he looked back down and rested his hands in his lap. She wasn't looking at him, just staring blankly at the TV mounted in the far corner of the room playing a marathon of that 70s show. "I'm so sorry, Adele," Roger said. "I shouldn't make light of—" "No, it's not that," Adele interrupted. Offering a quick smile, she said, "God knows I need a good laugh, but Roger, there's something I feel like I need to tell you. I need to tell you because now that Lawrence is gone, I'm the only one who knows, and that feels risky." "I'm all ears," Roger said. He leaned forward in his chair, planting his elbows on his knees. His shaggy salt and pepper hair swung forward to frame his face, and one of his dangling earrings flashed a dart of light at Adele's eyes. She took a shuddering breath and began. "Lawrence and well, I suppose it was mostly him. He was looking for something new, some kind of uniquely spiritual experience. Some broker he knew told him about a sort of spiritual retreat down in El Salvador, and he just wouldn't shut up about it. I told Lawrence I didn't want to go all the way to El Salvador, but he said that wasn't a problem. He'd managed to procure the same ayahuasca-based compound they used down there. I'm familiar, Roger interrupted. With the El Salvadorian retreat? Adele asked. Roger halfway raised one hand, cocked his head, and replied, well, there's certainly more than one, but I actually meant the plant medicine, ayahuasca. Adele's eyes lingered on him as she tried to decide if he was telling the truth. She shifted her eyes to the ceiling before continuing. Well, I had never heard of it, and besides, Roger said this was a unique compound based on ayahuasca. I'm not sure what made it any different. Not that I would have noticed. Anyway, the same broker friend of his apparently snuck some of this stuff back with him, or got it from... Well, it's neither here nor there. Bottom line is, we cleared our living room floor, set a fire in the fireplace, stripped off our... She stopped, her eyes flicking uncomfortably to her former priest. Even though he was now nothing more than a close friend, she often wondered if he saw her the same way. Also, at certain times, she still could not help but picture him in his cassock and Roman collar. She continued, We got comfortable, and Roger mixed up this gray concoction with a mortar and pestle on the living room floor. He drank his half first. I insisted on it, seeing as it was his idea and his friend who procured the stuff for us. I watched his pupils expand, and he practically shouted at me to hurry up and drink so we could, as he put it, see God together. How romantic, Roger said flatly. Adele made to continue, but he interrupted her again. Actually, hold on a minute. I don't know exactly where you're going with this, but I can already tell you what you did wrong. Oh, thank God, I knew you were the person to talk to, Adele replied. Roger said, Yes. Well, there's usually a ceremony to go with such a powerful psychedelic. We modern civilized people, he put this in air quotes, might look at the rituals surrounding the drug as superfluous extravagances performed by people who don't understand neurochemical reactions. I mean, just take the damn drug, right? It's not the singing and dancing that brings on the trip, am I right? I suppose you are, Adele replied, impatiently waiting to finish her story. Wrong, Roger said. In an extremely narrow sense, yes, it is the drug which makes you hallucinate. But that's not the full... He leaned forward. When you go on a road trip, do you just hop in the car and leave, or do you prepare for the journey? I'd rather not talk about driving at the moment, Adele said. And it was at this point, in the back of his mind, Roger realized how generally unfazed his friend seemed by the tragic loss of her husband and by her own injuries. She spoke so matter-of-factly about everything. It seemed she'd already accepted the recent tragic events, or perhaps had even been expecting them. Even this objection now seemed forced and phony, like something she knew she was expected to say. Of course not, he said. But just hear me out for a minute. Before you go on a trip, you pack all the things you need, but also decide what not to bring. You'd probably make sure you have a full tank of gas and maybe even get some extra rest to make sure you're awake and alert for the drive, yes? Yes. A psychedelic trip is essentially the same, and the rituals which accompany whatever compound you're going to ingest have been honed for thousands of years to make sure you're properly prepared for your journey. So, not that I need to spell it out for you, but by skipping all that preliminary junk, you got into the car with an empty tank, and maybe instead of clothes and your toothbrush, you brought a gallon of milk and a wool sweater, but it's 85 degrees and humid out. I get the idea, said Adele, clearly annoyed by now. Roger nodded and said, Continue. He leaned back. Adele's eyes returned to the TV. The visions hit me so fast. I couldn't sit up after I drank. I had to lay myself down before I completely lost control. Soon it was like I didn't even have a body. Like I was just a head. No, not even. Like I was an omnipotent ghost. But I didn't recognize the world anymore. I didn't know where to go, and the only thing that was left of the world I knew was the fire in my fireplace, still burning with the most beautiful orange light. It was just incredible. So I went to it. Walking into the fire, generally not a good idea, Roger muttered. Adele's head turned. I said it was beautiful, she snapped. Roger froze. She continued. From the flames, I heard a voice. It was calling to me, saying my name as if it were the most beautiful word in the world. I thought the voice belonged to Lawrence. Who else, I thought, would call to me that way? I thought it was him lying on the floor beside me in ecstasy, and I wanted to be with him. I wanted to join our spirits in the flames and transcend together. But it wasn't him, was it? Asked Roger. Without looking at him, Adele replied, No. I found that out almost right away. The fire became my entire reality. It consumed everything around me, but only with light, not heat. It didn't burn me. The closer I crawled to the center, I started feeling afraid of the voice calling my name. I didn't think it was Lawrence anymore. I called his name, hoping wherever he really was, he could direct me toward him. The voice then said to me, Come into the fire, Adele. Your Lawrence built it for you. I said no, and it said something like, I am the cure for the emptiness you feel. Or maybe it was hollowness, I can't remember. Roger leaned forward as if to say something, but Adele silenced him with a glance from her glistening eyes. When he saw how frightened she looked, he gave her a stoic nod and leaned back in his chair again. A feeling of emptiness, Adele continued, still looking directly into Roger's eyes, has followed me my entire life. Look at me, Roger. I'm the last person who should feel without. I thought, how did it know? By being linked to my subconscious, of course, but this thing in the fire, this thing I couldn't see, it didn't feel like a part of me. It felt like it was coming from outside. I didn't say anything to the voice in the fire, but I stopped moving toward it. I didn't move for what felt like hours, just watched and listened to the flames. Finally, I asked it. Adele sniffled, and Roger realized she'd finally begun to cry. He stood to reach the tissues on her bedside table. He handed one to her, then, as an afterthought, gave her a second before sitting back down. Adele thanked him with her eyes, using her voice to keep telling her story. Roger, you need to understand why I felt so empty to begin with. It's something I've never been able to talk to anyone but Lawrence about, but he always told me I was being illogical. It's this life I lead, Roger. The cost of all our luxuries has always been, for me, a crushing guilt that made all our nice things impossible to enjoy. But you could see how talking to anyone about this, even to my therapist, who I'm sure lives comfortably but not nearly to the same extent as me, garnered no sympathy. And Lawrence just couldn't understand. He never felt guilty or seemed bothered by our position. My guilt, my hollow existence, was something I bore alone. So when I finally spoke to the fire again, I asked it, Can you really cure this emptiness in me? The heatless fire surrounding me lit up even brighter and started forming shapes. I saw multiple iterations of myself, all smiling, all with so much joy behind their eyes. Other shapes became people hugging me, waving graciously in my direction. One was my father, who's been gone a long time, patting me on the back, looking so proud of me and what I'd become, whatever that was. I looked around at the affection and appreciation being bestowed upon my many glowing selves and knew that's what I wanted. That's what I most desired. I wanted a life others would appreciate, would love me for, instead of being jealous and hating me for. That's all. I asked the voice in the flames, How do I make this real? And the flames replied through the many mouths of the surrounding crowd, Open your heart, your mind, and your soul to whatever comes next. I closed my eyes but didn't stop seeing the vision. It just became clearer. Everyone in the fire was erased except my numerous clones, who all turned toward the central flame and the voice that came from it. One by one, they opened their arms and threw back their heads, ready to be engulfed. She noticed Roger had begun to look quite uncomfortable, as if he no longer belonged. Typical Roger. He'd probably come in thinking he would know exactly how to help her, exactly what to say, and now was beginning to recognize there were elements of her story and what had led her to the hospital that he could not have, prepared for. It came to the point when I was the only me not opening myself to the fire, so I stood up and, just like all the others, spread my arms wide and tipped my head back. I wondered if I should say something, but I didn't have to wonder for long. I heard the low roar of the fire getting louder, angrier, hungrier, and I looked at it. It was swelling and spiraling around itself. It looked almost like a tornado spinning just a few feet away from me. I hesitated. Something felt wrong. Something felt like a lie. But before I could say or do anything to extract myself, all the other versions of me became plumes of smoke. They twisted together above the tornado of fire and got sucked into it. A moment later, a giant smoky hand shot out of the flames and wrapped around me. I could not fight against its pull. This was so clear to me, so obvious, that I didn't even try. I let it draw me into the fire. I let it burn me inside and out. My blood became lava and my breath became smoke, and I could feel them both. I felt myself melting and burning and choking, and I didn't think the pain would ever go away. I knew then, Roger. I knew I'd let something in that didn't care about fulfilling me. It didn't care about me at all. It just needed me. It used my emptiness to get what it wanted. Or maybe it needed someone as empty as me to be its vessel. "Did you learn what it was?" Roger asked, his voice low and breathy. "It was evil," Adele replied. "That's all I know." "A demon, then," Roger said. "Oh, Roger, you're still thinking like a priest. All I truly know is that it had the power to possess, to burrow into my soul and latch on, and that its intentions came from a place of pure evil." "And it latched onto you," Roger said. "Apparently so," Adele replied vaguely. Her focus seemed to dissolve and her eyes grew blurry, reflecting the ceiling tiles and the green light from the occasionally chiming machine next to her head. She said, "Lawrence had to tell me what happened after that. I was there, but everything seemed like someone else's dream. I felt what my body felt, which was mostly pain, but I had no control over it. Even my brain felt disconnected from me. I saw thoughts more than I had them. I was nothing more than my soul, but trapped inside my body." "Aren't we all?" Roger stated glibly. Adele remained distant. "Lawrence told me later he had to lock me in the spare bedroom upstairs, or I probably would have hurt myself. He took out all the furniture and everything on the walls. He emptied the cupboards in the adjoining bathroom and even removed all the light bulbs. The thing inside me liked to hurt me for no other purpose than its own enjoyment. Lawrence did his best to prevent it from doing that, or at least made sure the damage wasn't too severe. He greatly underestimated my possessor, though. He rushed to the spare room one night to the sound of me, not really me, but you understand, cackling at the top of my voice. He said it sounded celebratory, like the demon, fine, we'll call it that, like the demon had won. He hurried to unlock the door and threw it open to find it staring at him through my eyes. He said it was making a face like a clown with arched eyebrows and a wide grin. He said the rest of my body was facing one of the opposite corners, though. This thing had turned my head almost completely around. I remember. I could feel the strain on my neck, the vertebra just about ready to tear away from one another. We both thought the demon was finally going to do it, going to kill me. To Lawrence's surprise, though, it allowed my neck to relax when he begged it to talk to him. It told him the only way it would leave me alone was if it were offered another in my place. I want to believe Lawrence would have given himself for me, but I cannot when I'm honest with myself, which explains the next part of his conversation with the spirit inside me. They agreed to terms I would have thought absolutely ludicrous had I been aware of the conversation happening. All I knew was the pain had momentarily stopped, which was usually my cue to rest and recuperate as much energy as possible. Anyway, Lawrence apparently forgot my age because the deal he worked out was that I would grow a child, a body without a soul, for the demon to possess in my stead. Ugh, Roger scoffed, unable to mask his horror at the idea. I feel the same way telling you about it, Adele said. And obviously, in my 60s, I'm much too old to have considered getting pregnant at all possible. But Roger, I tell you, I woke up something like 2 weeks later, feeling nauseous. I realized sorry for the graphic detail, I realized while bending over the toilet that I had control of my body again, and that I could see, hear, unfortunately taste, and even more unfortunately smell everything around me. I could also feel, and what I felt nestled deep inside me, where I'd been trapped for those endless days and nights, I felt another. Not a baby, no, it was much too early for that. I felt the presence of another, which I could only imagine was the demon, Roger finished. Yes, the demon, said Adele. My God, said Roger. Adele continued. The pregnancy lasted 13 months instead of 9. Lawrence wanted to take me to the hospital after the 10th month, but I insisted on keeping my, I guess you'd say, miraculous condition to ourselves. During those months, Lawrence hired a contractor to build a bunker underneath his golf course. He told the contractor it was one of those apocalypse shelters you always hear about wealthy people building. He kept it incredibly sparse, though. It consists of just one long passageway with a heavy door at the far end that leads to a single room. In that underground room is where I finally gave birth to the creature that possessed me. And that is where it remains to this day. Lawrence switched the door's lock with one from an old church and installed a labyrinth of symbols, charms, and totems from religions and cultures all across the world along the passageway leading to it. Roger gave her a sideways glance as if expecting this to be some kind of dark joke. He saw a tear running down her cheek, though, and knew she was serious. Delusional, maybe, believing some hallucination brought on by the accident, perhaps, but she certainly believed what she was saying. So, he began, trying not to sound rude, but making sure she could detect his skepticism. So, there's a baby locked away under your husband's golf course. Locking eyes with him, her own hardening with stoic resolve, Adele said, I need to make sure it stays trapped there, for all of eternity, if possible. Roger held her gaze for about 5 seconds, then leaned back, put his chin in his palm, and said, I suppose you didn't ask me here to talk about funeral arrangements. Adele called her groundskeeper and occasional concierge Ernesto to pick her up 5 days later when her doctor finally discharged her. Ernesto did not answer his phone, so Adele called the only other person she could think to, Roger. She and I did not have a familiar enough relationship for me to come to mind. That would soon change, as I'm sure you must expect. How else would I know about everything she told Roger in the hospital? Roger picked her up and drove her home. They drove in with the sun overhead, making the road look like a trillion shards of glass being swallowed by Roger's silver Hyundai Veloster. He turned them onto the semi-paved road which led to the wall of trees surrounding Adele's expansive estate. The sky grew more overcast the nearer they drove. As Roger's car crawled toward the locked gate at the beginning of the driveway, he noticed the light outside visibly diminishing. He hadn't checked the weather, so he supposed he could have been ignorant to a forecasted storm, but somehow he didn't think so. For some reason, the thickening clouds made him nervous. He knew the Crutchfield's house would certainly provide adequate protection against whatever might blow their way, but somehow their proximity to shelter did not comfort him. Truthfully, it made him quite uncomfortable. The stony scent of sepulchre wafted into the car via the air conditioner. It started to feel a little humid. "Is it raining?" Adele asked, looking out her window, trying different angles. "Must be somewhere," Roger replied. To himself, he thought, "Why don't I want to be here? I want to back down this driveway and floor it up the road. Should I? But Adele..." "Are you sure you're ready?" he asked tenderly. "To be home? Of course I am," Adele answered. Roger said, "I just mean, it will be the first time you've been in the house since Lawrence..." "Roger, drive me to the house, please," Adele enjoined. "Right," Roger replied. What about the gate?" Staring at her iPhone now, Adele said, "It takes a code." Roger waited for a few seconds to see if Adele would share the code with him. When she did not, just started tapping at her screen, he undid his seatbelt and grabbed the door handle. He cleared his throat and said, "I'd like to punch it in before the rain comes, if that's..." "It's an app, you idiot," Adele said, finally looking up and rolling her eyes at him. Roger stared at her, only looking away when he caught the gate moving out of the corner of his eye. Adele could see he'd been mildly hurt and added, "But thank you. You're a good friend, Roger." "As are you, Adele." He smiled at her as he eased off the brakes and, against his growing urge to flee, rolled through the gate. It closed behind them too quickly for Roger's taste, almost like something pushed it closed against the automatic mechanism. Its punctuating clank signaled the arrival of the inevitable downpour. Roger drove them up to the house. The driveway curved around a koi pond. As they passed the pond, Adele gasped. "What is it?" Roger anxiously asked. The closer they got to the house, the more his nerves seemed to crackle like severed live wires. "Our poor fish," Adele moaned. "Look at them all. Weren't they fed? Oh, where is everyone?" Roger put the car in park and craned his neck to see out her window. In a flash of silent lightning, he saw the white bellies of what must have been at least 24 koi fish floating on the surface. "Are you..." he began to ask, but stopped himself. Shaking her head about the fish, Adele asked, "Am I what?" "Are you absolutely sure you want to go inside?" he asked. Putting a hand on her shoulder, he said, "As your spiritual advisor, I feel I need to warn you that I'm sensing something very dark here. It's like it doesn't want me here. Are you getting any sense of that?" "It sounds like my spiritual advisor is a little paranoid," Adele chided. She unbuckled herself. "All I'm feeling is that I want to be home. Now, do you have an umbrella in here somewhere?" "Back here," Roger said, already reaching behind her seat for the black umbrella he always kept there in case of rain. Rather than offer it to Adele, he opened his own door, stuck the umbrella out to open it, and stepped out of the car. On a perfect day, or almost any other kind of day, the Crutchfield mansion looked like something out of a storybook. It sprawled 100 feet in either direction, white with black accents, pillars guarding the front door, and rising all the way through the second story where a balcony with an ornate railing looked down on the pond. But on that dark, stormy morning, the house looked oppressive. It gave Roger the same feeling he felt when he'd visited prisons and funeral homes in his previous career. Rain poured down off the balcony, forming a curtain between the pillars. Through the falling water, Roger could see the black front door. It gave him a gutting sense of foreboding, and he considered getting back in the car and simply driving away. What could Adele do to stop him? But Roger ignored this feeling, joining Adele in calling himself paranoid as he walked around the front of the car to open her door. "Thank you, Roger," she said, stepping out under his offered umbrella. To fully shield her meant partially exposing himself, but Roger stoically walked her the short distance to the porch. She moved slowly on her feet. He wondered why she hadn't been given a cane, then realized she'd probably rejected it out of pride. The rainy curtain drenched Roger's back just before he and Adele were finally shielded by the balcony. There, Adele thanked him, smiling and tilting her head, then left his side to unlock the front door. Her body language gave the impression she might step right through the door, but after she pushed it open, she froze mid-step. She placed her raised foot back where it started. "Roger?" she called. His face as still and expressionless as a dead man's, Roger said, "Yes." He did not move closer to her. Once she'd opened the door, every negative feeling he'd felt amplified by double. A new, almost premonitory feeling added itself, a haunting knowledge that he was going to die here. "Roger," Adele repeated, peering through the now halfway open door. "Roger, something's wrong." "Please get away from there," Roger said, his voice barely more than a breathy whisper. The open door had a bipolar magnetic quality, both urging him toward it and repulsing him. This contradiction nauseated him. He repeated, "Adele, please come away from the door." She stepped to the side so as not to stand directly in front of the door, but continued peering inside. "Oh, Roger, it's..." She trailed off, now stepping backward. Roger tried to see into the house, but everything looked black. He'd noticed most of the curtains were drawn, and with the storm outside, he supposed the shadows in the house could have been natural, but then, what was Adele reacting to? She retreated to him, leaving the door agape. "Please don't go in there," he whispered to her. She could only just hear him above the pattering rain. "I can't," she whispered back, staring through the door. "What did you see?" Roger asked, looking away, trying to break the door's pull on him. "I didn't," Adele started. "I didn't see anything. It's just, I have a feeling." "Me too," Roger said, relieved to hear her say it. "But we can't just leave the door open," said Adele. Roger looked from her to the door, then back. He continued hearing haunting whispers about his death. Otherwise, he would have automatically gone to the door himself. He wondered if Adele heard the same voices in her head. After a few seconds, Adele nudged him. He looked at her, saw a pleading fear in her eyes. He nodded curtly and handed her the open umbrella. Even though the overhanging balcony still shielded her from the rain, she raised the umbrella over her head as Roger approached the door. Roger tried to see deeper into the shadows. He'd been to the house a handful of times before and looked for the traces of familiar objects, like the narrow table running along the staircase near the entryway. It usually had flowers on it, brightly colored orchids, tulips, roses, and such, depending on the season. Objects began to take shape as he came within arm's reach of the door. At this proximity, he became certain the shadows were too dark, too dense to be natural. These shadows were a mask, a veil for something not wanting to be seen. He swallowed and reached his right hand inside for the doorknob. Two small, dim lights lit up side by side low to the ground at the end of the entryway. At the same time, Roger heard a growl too low to be a dog, but similar in timbre. The door slammed shut, jamming his outstretched fingers nearly hard enough to snap them. Roger fell backward, holding his throbbing hand. He screamed, "Get back to the car!" and practically tripped over himself as he ran, almost leaving Adele to hobble back to the car herself. Lightning cracked overhead, splintering the atmosphere with sharp, immediate thunder. Only Roger saw it strike. Its afterglow fizzled along the flag sticking up from the second hole of Lawrence's golf course. Adele shouted and grabbed his arm to stop him as the flag caught fire, waving rapidly in defiance of the rain. The flames finished consuming that flag. In the same second, another bolt of lightning struck the first and closest flag to Roger and Adele. That one, too, caught fire, in spite of the pouring rain. "Get in," Roger shouted. He rushed Adele to the car and shoved the umbrella into her hands. He didn't bother with chivalry this time, just opened his own door and dove into his car. Adele, wincing at her healing wounds, rounded the car and did the same. Staring at the closer of the charred flagpoles, Roger said, "I don't think it wants us here." "Will your car get us down there?" Adele asked. She pointed to the knobby grove of trees across the golf course. "Adele, I think we should—" "Roger, I need to make sure the baby is still locked inside the bunker. I don't know how it possibly could have escaped, but if it did, someone needs to know." "I don't know, Adele," Roger replied. "It's pouring. The ground will be soft. We could get stuck." Adele pursed her lips and shook her head. She grabbed her door handle and said, "Fine. Just wait for me here." "Adele!" Roger shouted. She immediately paused, having expected this reaction. Resigned, he said, "Okay, let's try. But if the car feels like it could get stuck, I'm turning around. This is our only way out of here." "My Mercedes is still in the garage," Adele assured him. "And where are the keys?" Roger asked, putting his Hyundai in gear. Adele looked toward the house and quietly answered, "Right. Let's just be careful then." Roger felt the wheels slipping beneath them as they cruised over the golf course toward the knobby grove. His Veloster didn't have any trouble at 20 miles per hour, but he feared what might happen to it when they stopped. They might not be able to get it moving again if it sat too long and sank. The storm wasn't showing any sign of letting up. Lightning grew frequent, many bolts striking close, although not as deliberately as the first two. They felt like reminders of the storm's power, warnings not to step out of line. Although the rain prevented them from seeing too far into the distance, Roger was pretty sure he could see sunlight and a blue sky not far past the property line. He didn't say anything about it to Adele, but thought she likely noticed the strange concentration of the storm as well. "Don't drive into the trees, there's roots sticking up," she warned as they neared the grove. "Wasn't planning to," Roger said. He slowed down, preparing to make the dreaded stop. Before the car completely stilled, Adele already had her hand on the knob. She turned to say, "Stay in and keep the car running. If it's gotten free, we need to leave as quickly as possible." "Wonderful plan, darling," Roger replied, flashing her a sarcastic, toothy smile. Adele turned away and groaned. "This will be slightly more tolerable without the attitude, thank you." Roger didn't respond. With a deep breath and a sigh, Adele shoved the door open and hurled herself into the rain. She limped toward the knobby grove, devoid of any leaves so it would not provide any shelter from the rain. She stopped in the center of the grove. Roger's heart sank when he saw her hands shoot up to her forehead, and for a moment he thought she might faint. This, he assumed to be a sign of bad news. Then, as if moving unconsciously, Adele turned around in place and crouched to the ground. Roger scrunched his forehead and leaned forward, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Adele's body disappeared in the grass. Then her head vanished as well. Roger swore and kicked his door open, lunging into the pouring rain. He slammed the door to get it out of his way so he could sprint to the knobby grove. By the time he entered the trees, Adele had completely vanished. He shouted her name and ran toward the place he'd last seen her. The toe of his loafer slammed into something hard, nearly tripping him. He glanced down and saw he'd kicked a manhole cover. Still recovering, he nearly put his uninjured foot through a wide hole. He saw how Adele disappeared. There was a ladder going down into the hole. He could see no light down there, and over the rain he couldn't hear anything either. He tried calling Adele's name, but a sharp burst of thunder muted his voice. Though every instinct screamed at him to flee, he could not leave her down there, handicapped and alone. So, biting his lower lip, he descended into the darkness. Halfway down the ladder, a hand reached out and grabbed his ankle. Roger screamed and flailed his leg to shake the hand loose. Thankfully, it let him go easily. "Roger!" Adele hissed at him. "Adele, what are you? Get out of here, quickly! We need to leave right away!" Roger scrambled up the slippery ladder, turning immediately to hoist Adele out of the hole. Without another word, he aided her back to his car. Now they were both soaked, but paid little mind to the wet and damp making their joints and muscles ache. The front wheels spun as Roger put the car in gear. He turned them slightly, searching for traction. He knew this might dig them in deeper, but fortunately one of his wheels found a tree root and pulled them forward. He kept the car in low gear to get them off the course. When they reached the driveway, he shifted and sped toward the gate. "I'm guessing I don't have to ask," he said as the ominous house shrank in the rear windshield. Adele shook her head. It had been hard to tell at first due to the rainwater dripping from her flattened hair, but now Roger could see she was crying. She reached clumsily for his right arm and slid her hand down it until she found his. He released the wheel to squeeze her hand tightly. Whispering, Adele said, "I don't know how, but it's free, Roger. My baby is free." This concludes Act 2 of the Crutchfield estate. If you're enjoying the story, please rate, like, review, or subscribe. For early, ad-free episodes and behind-the-scenes episodes I call Into the Woods, become a patron at patreon.com/thewarningwoods. You can also support the show by purchasing merch. The merch store and Patreon links are in this episode's description. To stay up to date, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Warning Woods. When you feel ready, meet me here for another journey into the Warning Woods. Thank you for listening.